The first and only book that I ever read from V.E. Schwab was Addie LaRue back in the day when she first came out, and yeah, that was a mistake. I really couldn't get into the story. I felt like the characters are really shallow, the plot is boring. It just was not for me, and so I DNF'd that book and couldn't really bring myself to read literally any other book from V.E. Schwab. But my friend, she couldn't let it go, you know? She was constantly talking about vicious, darker shade of magic, constantly telling me that you need to try out her other books because her writing style is completely different in both of them. And so finally, after months and months, I decided to check out Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. This is an adult fantasy it takes place in a universe that has a lot of different dimensions that can be differentiated by the amount of magic every single one of them contains. The main character, Kel, has a very rare ability to be able to travel through these dimensions, and so he uses his power to legally smuggle objects between them. I thought it was pretty cool. One day, Kel gets tricked into smuggling an object that comes from a dimension that long ago has been locked up and completely sealed so that nothing or no one can get into it or out of it because of the destructive magic it has. And as Kel is trying to smuggle that object, he realizes that this is a trap and in rather an unfortunate way meets up Lila, who's our second main character. She has believed her whole life that there is no magic in this world, and she always dreamed about going on a big adventure. So when she meets Kel and he tells her that he needs to take back this object to that other dimension, she taggles along to help him out with this mission. And so the whole story revolves around these two characters traveling from London's in many different dimensions while simultaneously being chased by Kel's rival Holland, who wants to steal the object from him and possibly kill him. I think the first thing I want to tackle when it comes to talking about this book is the world building in it, because it's just really good. I felt like the concept was super unique. The book starts by teaching the reader all about the Londons in all of these dimensions. We have Grey London, Red London, White, and Black. And every single one of them is like a little bit different depending on the amount of magic it has. So Grey London is the most similar to, I guess, our real life. It basically has no magic in it. Then we have Red London, where Kel comes from, and magic is pretty commonly used there. Another dimension is White London that also has a lot of magic in it, but magic over there is used rather for more dangerous and negative things rather than, for example, in the Red London, where people use it to protect themselves and their stores, objects. In White London, people use magic rather to hurt each other. And finally, we have Black London that has been sealed off from other dimensions so that the incredibly dark and destructive magic that it has doesn't leak to other dimensions. There were so many little details that truly made each dimension feel so much more real and gave us readers such vivid images of them. But I have to make a complaint that there was just too much info dumping in the first 150 pages. It was just a little bit too much. I felt like, okay, can we finally get to the plot? I really liked how it was described that this is like pages in a book. So let's say we have a few pages. Each dimension is basically one page in a book, and therefore you can't jump from page 1 to page 3. You first have to go to page 2 and then to page 3. So, for example, when Kel and Lila are traveling from Grey London, they can't jump straight to White London. They first have to go through the red one. But really cool. I love when magic has limitations and this felt like a very realistic limitation as well. Because there was so much world building, the actual plot of the story starts around 50% into the book. Because of this, it made the plot feel very short, and the tension in it didn't really feel build up enough. And so now we're gonna get into the plot. As I've mentioned, Kel takes on a job to smuggle just this mysterious small package from a lady that claims that she just wants this package to be delivered to a family member that she really misses, and Kel, being a good-hearted person, just agrees to do it without really knowing what is inside the package. When Kel gets to the spot that he's supposed to deliver the package to, he quickly realizes that there is something off with the containments of the package. He realizes that inside of it there is a stone broken in half. He feels that this stone contains dark magic that comes from the Black London. Not only is that magic extremely dangerous, but it's also illegal to have any object that contains that magic. So he makes the conclusion that this whole smuggling mission was just a trap, and it was set up by his rival from the White London, Holland. He attacks Kel in an attempt to steal back the object from him and bring it to the Dane twins, which are the rulers of the White London. Kel manages to escape to the Grey London, but he does get severely injured by Holland, and that is where he meets Lila. And before that meeting point, we follow simultaneously the steps of Lila, who has never really had a real home or family due to a really brutal life that she had living on the streets. She has learned to steal stuff to make money. She dreams of freedom and being able to own a ship that could take her on just this grand lifetime adventure. As she's going back to the place she's currently staying in, she bumps into the injured Kel and walks up to him, quickly talks to him, and also leaves immediately. Right after that happens, Kel notices that there is something off. There's nothing in his pocket anymore. Lila stole the stone. So now Kel needs to find Lila to get back the stone in order to bring it back to the Black London, because he believes that this kind of dangerous object should not be outside of its dimension. And the only way to get rid of it is to simply go in person to the Black London and leave it there. The setup for the story is super cool. I also really liked how Kel and Lila don't meet in like good circumstances. You know, Kel is injured, Lila steals something from him. They naturally become enemies, and I kind of like that, because a lot of the times when we see enemies in books, they are already at the opposite sides of the conflict. We never really get to meet characters whose interests just conflict right at the start of their relation, and that is what sets them into becoming enemies. I also want to talk about characters, and this is the moment where I'm gonna say that there will be a few spoilers for the book, so if you're not interested in them, you can skip to the last part where I will be talking about my overall thoughts. What I found pretty unique in the story is that we have three main villains. We have the Dane twins, Astrid and Anthas, who are the twin rulers of the White London. Both of them are capable of using magic, and they crave more and more power. Currently, they own the other half of a stone that Kel got, and they want Kel to give that second half to them so that they can join the stones together and use the stone as an amplifier to their powers. The third villain is Holland, who is Kel's rival. They both are an Antari, which is kind of like a person that is able to not only travel through each dimension, but also is able to use blood magic. He has been enslaved by the Dane twins who torture him to force him to do everything they want, basically. And so, even though Holland does a lot of horrible things throughout the whole book, you still kind of feel sympathy for him because you know that he wouldn't do any of those things if he wasn't tortured and enslaved by the Dane twins. I guess Holland is more of an antagonist where the real villains are Astrid and Anthus. Moving on to Kel, the first thing I really want to talk about is just the looks, and not just Kel's looks, but all of the characters. I have never seen such vivid descriptions of characters like I have in this one. I could so easily picture literally everyone, the way they looked, the color of the skin, their hairstyle even, their clothes, and Kel's design is like 10 out of 10 for me. Super unique and really memorable as well. I loved it. Kel is also an Antari and he comes from the Red London. He has been adopted by the royal family there, but he never really truly felt like a member of that family. His parents never really cared about him and they only keep him because he's just a useful tool for them. And that relationship between him and his parents was so interesting for me. I actually wish that it was explored more because it's implied that he really feels like a property of his family and not a person. And at the same time, he genuinely loves his brother. So this complication, this relationship where he really feels disconnected from his parents but loves his brother, that really should have been developed a bit more, but unfortunately, it wasn't. I feel like that could probably be fixed if we just added 2 more chapters establishing those relationships between those characters. I also really enjoyed the rivalry between Kel and Holland because even though they're constantly trying to kill each other through the whole book, you still see that they respect each other, and Kel has a lot of sympathy for Holland. He is aware that if Holland wasn't enslaved by the Dane twins, then he just wouldn't do any of those things. And at some point when Holland loses a fight, Kel shows mercy by killing him, and therefore he sets Holland free. And I felt like that was a really great way to finish that rivalry between them. But again, I really wish that this complicated relationship was explored a bit more. The other main character is Lila, and I think this is the first time ever where I read about a female main character who genuinely dreams about embarking on a journey to live long enough to go on an epic adventure. And it was such a breath of fresh air. I've never seen a heroine like this who just wants to be free. I also respected the hell out of her, where at the end of the book it's revealed that she may not be able to leave the White London. And of course she is a bit shaken up by this because she knows that White London is a very dangerous place, especially for a person who has no magic. But at the same time she realizes that this is simply a consequence of her actions. She knows that, yeah, I did sign up for an epic adventure and I know that each adventure ends, sometimes even tragically, and she's okay with it because she has lived through her dream already. She uses her own experience of all these years fighting for her life and food and shelter and says that I know it'll be dangerous, but I'll make it here because I am always able to find myself in dangerous situations. But I still have very mixed feelings when it comes to this character. She had her moments, but there were specifically 3 scenes that made me question her entire personality and also morality. So the first situation takes place right after Kel and Lila get into the Red London. This is their first stop in their adventure, I suppose. She instantly gets separated from Kel, and it's the first time ever where she's in a completely different dimension. She knows nothing about it, including the culture, the language. She didn't even know that magic existed literally 2 days earlier. And now she's entering a dimension where magic is very commonly used. She, instead of trying to kind of fit in, gets herself lost in the crowd so that she doesn't stick out. out, she decides that she's just gonna steal something. Because, as I quote, she can't resist it. Of course, and naturally, she gets into trouble because the object she's trying to steal turns out to be protected with magic, and the owner of that shop starts yelling at her in a language she doesn't understand. So that's one thing. But second thing in that scene is the fact that she just didn't face any consequences at all. I really dislike the way it was handled because we're supposed to believe that she grew up on the streets, and so she really had to learn how to observe people, how to fit in. And yet the first thing she does when she gets to a completely unknown place is to recklessly put herself in danger. And not only that, she literally has to be saved by someone else to get out of that danger. I don't know, I do agree that maybe this was simply shown that she is not a perfect character. She has flaws, and throughout her whole life she has learned not only to steal in order to survive, but also it kind of became a habit for her, and she does that out of greed. I am willing to let it slide, even though this scene really might be like roll my eyes at Lila, but I am not willing to let the other two things slide. So we're gonna start with the less bad one. Towards the end of the book, Astrid Dane, who is one of the twins from the White London, attacks Kel and steals the stone from him. She escapes back to White London with that stone, and Lila immediately wants to stop her, go after her, but Kel warns Lila that she's just not strong enough to go after Astrid and win in a fight with her. To which Lila replies, "Why? Is it because I'm a girl?" No. Where did that came from? This is what I don't understand. Like, why did she even make that conclusion? Because first of all, Kel literally never ever said anything about, I don't know, women being weaker and commented on her being a woman. I felt like, if anything, he always really respected Lila and considered her to be a very strong person. And also, it just logically makes no sense, like this argument, because Ashid herself is a girl. And so the question of, oh, you don't want me to fight the strong girl because you think that I'm not strong because I'm a girl, it makes no sense now, does it? Naturally, Kel explains to Lila that, no, Lila, you can't fight her because you're a human with no magic. I felt like this sentence came completely out of nowhere, and I think at least it was supposed to be this empowering sentence for all the girls reading the book, but it just fell so flat. And then the third, absolutely worst one for me. Right after Kel and Lila get into the Red London, she learns that this is where Kel comes from and that he has been adopted by the royal family. And for some reason, it just sends her off the edge. She takes this so personally for some reason. Kel even warns her that, hey, like, maybe I am adopted into this family, but like, I'm not a real family member to them. I'm just a tool in their hands, and I'm not their son, I'm not a prince. But she completely does not listen to him and even dares to say, oh, boo-hoo, you expect mercy from me? Well, you're not gonna get it. Kel, and me as well, is super confused and is trying to talk to her, but she continues to make him feel bad. Lila tells him that he has no right to complain about his family because he's rich and he grew up with a roof above his head and food on his plate. And she, on the other hand, never had that luxury. She had to fight for food and shelter, and so he has no right to complain about his family and him not being loved by them because he always had everything compared to her. That's like half of what pissed me off in that scene. And then the other half is the fact that Kel, after listening to Lila yelling at him, feels so guilty that he apologizes to her. You're telling me that Kel got a bit vulnerable with Lila, and he reveals that he has a very messy relationship with his adoptive parents who don't love him or care about him and treat him like an object, and she dares to not only make it all about herself, but also shame him by saying that he's not allowed to complain about being abused because there are people out there who have it worse than him. I really need to stress this, that we all go through very difficult things in life, and saying that someone is not allowed to talk about their issues just because they have money is so messed up on so many different levels. It personally really hits me because in real life, I have seen so many situations like this happen so often, where someone would complain about their parents being abusive, about not being loved or cared for, and just having a lot of mental health issues because of their family, and then other people just completely discrediting that because, oh well, you have a house and you have food, maybe you have a little bit of money as well. So I feel like having money and mental health issues and traumas and abuse, like they don't correlate. And so I don't really understand why Lila jumps into that conclusion in the first place. It's especially a really bad thing because family stuff is just in general a very sensitive and personal topic to a lot of people, and most of us actually go through a lot of family traumas. And so to belittle someone else's trauma by looking at their issues through the lens of your own troubles is not okay. I really hated that scene, especially because towards the end of it, Kel apologizes to Lila, and even though these were only 3 scenes in the whole book, they really made me question Lila's emotional maturity. I understand her struggles and her morality. Heck, I can even understand why stealing became a habit for her and why she is so greedy because of it. I really can. But I felt like yelling at Kel and making him apologize for his issues because you had it worse, it's just not okay. I feel like there is a difference between making someone realize and acknowledge their privilege and using it as an argument to fit your narration. 2 completely different things. This situation should have been handled with much more empathy and understanding of the other person. I think it would have been better if it wasn't actually Lila who pointed out Kel's privilege, but maybe Kel. Kel could just simply show Lila around Red London and tell her kind of how he grew up living with his adoptive family, and then Lila on the other hand would compare it to her life and how she grew up, and that would make Kel realize, oh, we have completely different backgrounds, and I never really realized the amount of privilege I had growing up. And even though it does not make his traumas any less bad, he now can look at himself through the lens of her experiences, and he can really see her point, what she's trying to say, and now he's able to understand her even better. Do you feel me? Like, it would have been so much better if they mutually bonded over this, instead of one person yelling at the other one and the other one apologizing. I really feel like this scene was supposed to make Lila feel like a very strong feminist character, but the thing is, she already was a strong feminist character. There was really no need for her to be so rude and make other people look bad, especially when as Kel are being vulnerable to her. It also felt like a very one-sided relation with Kel and Lila because Kel never challenged Lila back. It's always a very one-sided thing, even when Lila is just acting like a little dummy. She just never gets any consequences for her actions. She never gets scolded. She never makes any mistakes in the narration eyes. She is just so perfect that she comes into the life of a man and shakes up his entire world. The setup for her character was there, but these little moments made her stand out in a very negative way. To sum up my opinions about Darker Shade of Magic, we're gonna go through a list of pros and cons. Starting with pros, this book has a fantastic and very detailed world building. We also have very unique and memorable character designs. I mean, visually, I could so easily picture every character, even including the way they style their hair, which was such a interesting detail for me. Male characters too, not just female, male characters as well. We also have a lot of complicated relationships between the characters, especially between Kel and Holland, Kel and his parents. There were actually a few scenes that I didn't see coming, which is nice because I usually can predict a lot, if not everything. Both the story and the world building was strong enough to carry on throughout the whole series, because sometimes, you know, when you read a book, you feel like this could have been a duology, this could have been a standalone, but I feel like there is enough stuff to explore in this book to make a whole series out of it. And another pro is that there were actually dangerous battles. I loved the fact that the characters get seriously injured. Going into the cons, we have too much info dumping. As I said, like, you really have to get through 50% of the book in order to get to the actual plots, even though for me it was really interesting to read about, but at the same time I was like, okay, can we like speed things up a bit? The next one is the writing style. I specifically mean that there is a lot of comments in brackets, and there's at least one of those comments on every page, and it's just simply there for the comical relief, but because of it, it makes the writing style feel quite juvenile, which was a bit strange considering that this is an adult fantasy. So the next con is, well, Lila. And finally, not enough of Kel's background story, especially his complicated relationship with his family. Even though I did put that relationship with the family in prose, but I really do feel like it was not developed enough. I felt like, yes, we hear him talking about being used as a tool, but we never actually saw him being used like that. I wish that we added a few more chapters talking about his complicated family relationships. Overall, I would rate this book 4 out of 5 stars. I'm really happy about that because I hardly ever rate anything above 3 stars. So that was a really nice surprise for me. And I am planning to read the whole series. Don't know if I'm gonna make videos about it yet, but we will see.